everyone, this is Karma for y'all that are just joining in. So as some of y'all know, I do a podcast, paranormal podcast called Explain Strange podcast, and we usually use a platform called Riverside. But the spirits just are not working in our favor, and they did not want to let Karma use that. So obviously, they wanted to be on Facebook. So here we are. So we're gonna go that route. So basically, Karma, she has haunted objects, but she also is she flips homes with a contractor, and she's had a demon run her out of one of the homes.
My home.
So we're definitely. Oh, okay.
Oh,
Your
yeah.
home, the home that you currently.
Oh,
I
yeah.
missed that. Okay, so I'm definitely interested in that. And she's also got girls that she calls Dead Zone girls. I don't know if we'll get to that today because we only have such a limited time. But if not, we definitely can bring you back. We love to bring people back, especially people that have stuff to share. So we'll dive back in. I know you're probably going to feel like you're repeating yourself here a bit.
Not a problem.
So can you tell me what kind of haunted objects you have? Do you have just dolls or do you have more than dolls?
I have so much more than dolls. It started out as dolls, and then it went to mirrors and telephones and just any general weird thing. I'm not just specifically collecting haunted items. I collect things that I like that happen to have energy.
Awesome. And so I know when we were talking before, we had talked about how you do tests on your dolls or whatever, like or your objects. So when you're doing those tests, do you set up like cameras to film any kind of paranormal activity? If so, how long do you film or watch these objects to see the potency or whatever of how paranormal the object is compared to others?
So when I bring something into my home, I always check it for energies. And it's a very simple process. The very first and foremost thing that I do is go live. I always do these checks on live. I employ my K2 and my REM pod. And I will use motion detectors. And occasionally I'll use an app that will let these objects talk to me, but I don't give those a lot of credit because 9 times out of 10, your REM pod can be tripped by stomping on the floor or clapping your hands. You can get a lot of false readings off of those. The K2, that can pick up random readings also. And any of the electronics are affected by the electric grid within your home or the area you're working in. So my very best search is using my animals. My cat, my cats and my dog. If they react to something, then I know there's definitely something there.
Right. I love people that film stuff. Like I don't want to necessarily say because I might get PETA after me if I say this. I love using animals. Research study. But they are like children. Like you're not gonna get a dog or a cat or whatever to act like on cue. And if you can, better be sending it to Hollywood.
Exactly. They're run by their instincts, so you can trust them.
Exactly. So, I mean, I have 2 dogs. One of my dogs I feel is more empathetic or empathic, whatever, to the paranormal world or whatever. And I feel like he gets affected a lot. He'll get touched and all kinds of things. My other dog, I'll catch her staring off, like she'll start growling and stuff, but the one seems to be more physically affected than the other. But I definitely agree with you on that. And I know I personally, I don't know, do you follow Dalen with the Graveyard Shift?
No, I don't think so.
Okay. Well, he has a channel as well. But anyways, he was on TV. He was part of the Ghost Brothers. I don't know if you're familiar with that show.
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Well, now he has a YouTube channel, so you definitely check it out. We support him, and he's
oh my God,
us.
I love those guys.
Yeah, so he uses something called the Sono X10, which is an app on the phone, Spirit Box, and I that is literally the only app that I trust. But I don't know about you. I know like you're speaking with haunted objects or whatever, and I don't know if you've ever gotten an object from somebody that you may have known the history of as far as about the person. But what I do is like when I'm using something like that, I always try and ask definitive questions.
Right,
So like if I'm trying to speak to a particular person, I ask something only like that they would know, like
right,
that can't
right,
be put in there, because I know a lot of these just have words that are just in there
right. And
anyway.
you
So
have to read into it.
right,
I'm not a Zach
right,
Baggins. I can't make up a story by one word.
right, exactly. So yeah, um, so I'm glad that you understand what I'm talking about because some of these, like you can totally tell, like they're just phony, full of crap, just for fun. like, like you'll ask a question and as absolutely like it'll spit out something, and you're like, that has nothing to do with anything I
Thank
just
you.
asked you. Like,
You
what
know,
are you talking?
are you a man or a woman? Three.
Yeah,
Okay, what?
like, and or enter like, no, that's not what I asked. So yeah, some of these are just totally for fun and
Yeah, they
phony.
are for fun. They
Yeah.
are for fun.
So when you go out to the antique shops or whatever, how do you know that this object is calling to you, or how do you know that it may potentially be haunted? Or do you just go into an antique store and find something that interests you with, the oldness or uniqueness of it, and then you later on find out that it's haunted?
Okay, so both actually. I go in for a long time, for 10 years, my holy grail was to find an antique candlestick telephone that was in perfect working order.
Right.
So I was chronically, like habitually, it was obsessed finding this thing. I finally did, and I'm like, oh, well, now what? But in the course of trying to find this specific object, I picked up a lot of other things, not
Right.
knowing or even, I don't know. You're an empath, are you not? Okay,
Yes.
so you
Well,
know you can tune it out if you want to.
yeah, like psychic. Yeah.
Right,
So yeah, like turn it on, turn it off,
right.
like
And
which
when
one?
you get
Well,
into an antique shop, because of all the blended energies in places like that, I automatically just shut down. And it's got to be
right.
something big to really get to me. So
Mm-hmm.
for me, when something like that happens, when I encounter something that has a massive amount of energy and could potentially be haunted, I actually feel like
Mm-hmm.
I've been punched in the stomach. It becomes an unpleasant experience. It doesn't mean
Right.
that it's a negative influence. It just means that this is where my solar plexus is where it hits me. And when it does,
Right.
I know that there's something around somewhere. So
Mm-hmm.
I actually go in. Now it's for fun because I've already found my holy grail and I'm kind of lost. But I like
Mm-hmm.
weird, quirky, unusual items, and specifically composition dolls that are from the turn of the 19th century. That's a huge collection item for me. But I also love medical instruments
Yeah.
because they're just creepy.
Right.
And I'm not
So
beyond trying to creep myself out either.
so you're
So,
like into oddity like stores as well, like
yes.
not just antique, like where you go and find like some of the stuff that people would be like, why do you want that in your home? But it's
Right,
just
yeah.
cool. Like,
They kind of
yeah.
look at me like, okay. So, because I frequent a certain number of places, there's about 10 of them I go to habitually.
Mhm.
They
Right.
know what I'm looking for. And I've even had one antique dealer, the owner of a shop, that was talking to me about creepy dolls, and she said, "Hold on." She went to the back room and came out with a box, and I'm like, she goes, "Take this with you." I'm like, "What is it?" She goes, "Open it." And I opened it, and there was two dolls inside. And I was like, "What's the deal?" She said, "One of my vendors brought it in one
Mhm.
day, brought the two dolls in, and he said, 'These are yours. I don't want them.'" And she opened it and said, "I don't want them either." He said, "Well, too bad, they're yours."
Right.
So,
Yeah.
and immediately I noticed I never got any reaction from these dolls. But I noticed, and I've seen this before, I don't know why people do this, but they paint the eyes with, I guess it's whiteout. And
Oh, okay. Yeah.
because I guess it freaks them out to have these dolls stare at them. But, I had to wonder what these specific dolls did to frighten this older man that I never could discover
Yeah.
what it was. And they're in a box somewhere because I've never gotten any activity from them.
Right.
So certain
Well,
objects will react differently with different people.
right. Absolutely. And like that's another thing. It depends on like you said, we know how to turn ourselves off. So
Right.
like we, in order to, have an encounter, like we have to, turn ourselves on to, be looking for that. But some people that may not know how to do that, or it may just be they don't have an interest in us. Like we may have ourselves on, but they're not particularly looking for us. They might be looking
They don't
for
even
an
know they
older,
have it.
like, you know, so yeah, exactly. Or like I said, they could be interested in a man. They might not be interested in a female.
Right.
So it just really depends on who is within inside that object. If that's what they're looking for,
Right.
personally. And I know me as a child, most little girls love dolls. I've always hated dolls. Like they've always creeped me out. Like the only doll that I think is like super cute that I really want really bad is an doll. Like I think the little, those dolls are so cute.
Yeah.
But specifically like my mom, she used to collect these dolls that are like they have the nice dress and like, the curly hair and like the real like,
Oh yeah.
pretty all that. Like, and those dolls were always like super creepy to me. Never had anything happen with them. I've just always found like those dolls particularly creepy. More than like
Some people
Barbies or whatever.
find them repulsive. The more decorated they are, the more repulsive they are to people. In other
Yeah.
words, these are what are billed out to be the high end of the market for porcelains. I don't collect porcelains. I don't
Right.
want the pretty ones. I want I grew up an ugly child and I want to collect ugly dolls because
Right.
they just
Yeah.
make me happy. Those are the ones that need the most love. So
Right.
those are the ones that
Now,
attract me the most.
do you feel that like the objects that you have chose you to be their
Hmm.
owner?
Yes. Um, I'll give you one example. I have extremely few male dolls, not because I don't like male dolls, just because I don't usually find them.
Right.
And I saw an ad on Marketplace for a Laurel and Hardy set, and they're porcelain. I don't collect those, but I wanted a couple of boys in the mix. So I met this older lady at a convenience store not far from here to purchase the dolls from her. And we got to chatting, and I told her I like composition dolls that people don't normally like. The older, the more decrepit, the better. And she asked me to follow her home. And of course, my daughter was mortified that I'm following this person I don't know to her home. And I'm like, well, she's old. I feel like I could take her. We got down to it. So I went to her house and she asked me, I was talking with her husband, older couple, very charming people. And she asked me to wait. She sent her husband up to the attic and she said, this is a doll that my grandchildren refuse to even look at. They cry and say they don't want to play with the Chucky doll. And that's one of my favorite dolls. She's composition. She's very old. She belonged to this elderly woman's mother. And so
Okay.
it's been in the family for a very long time, but she's crinkled and crackled and she was peeling. And I could see how a child would look at her and go, ah. So I was like, yes, I would like her. And she's had a good home with me ever since. She's never given me an ounce of trouble. I don't collect them specifically because they give me trouble. And it's often the ones that I think I won't have any problems with at all that give me trouble.
Right. The ones that like they're like, I'm gonna sneak up on her. Like she thinks we're not gonna do anything, and
love to wake up and see one of my dolls staying next to the bed. I would love that. I think that would be hilarious. But I was alone, so
right.
We're gonna hate the dolls. Hate them all.
So now interested about your objects and all. But like I said, when we first started out talking here, so I completely misunderstood. I thought that you had flipped this home and got rid of it. So the current home that you live in has a demonic entity in it?
No, 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 no,
No.
no. Okay,
No.
so as a contractor, when I tell you I flip these homes, I flip them for the owners. I'm the contractor that goes in, does all the work
Okay.
by
Mhm.
myself, including, subflooring, drywall, paint, everything. I do it all.
Okay.
And
Hmm.
then I turn it over to the owner and they'll either rent it out or sell it. There was a
Okay.
specific home that I worked on in Spartanburg, which is the next big town over from where I live in Greenville. And I was
Okay.
working on it, and I asked the property manager, well, why can't I rent this house? She's like, go ahead. So it's a big tri-level home. In other words, it's split level. So
Right.
the main floor is your main level. Then you have the upstairs, and then you have the downstairs, which is the basement. It's a huge
Mhm.
house. And I
Right.
rented it for less than a year. The owner called me, and he said, I'm going to make you an offer you can't refuse. And I'm like, okay. He said,
Hmm.
I want to sell this house to you. Your house payments will be less, substantially less than your rental payment. I'll pay all the closing costs. I'll pay all the taxes. All you have to do is just keep doing what you're doing and you own it. I'm like, okay. So I did. I signed the contract. I bought the house. I was a proud homeowner. And the entire time, I already
Hmm.
knew there was something wrong with it, but I didn't, I thought I knew about the paranormal, but I didn't
Hmm.
know anything. So, in other
Right.
words, you could never get enough light in this huge home. Like, I became obsessed with lamps.
Hmm.
I literally had over 100 lamps to the
Wow.
point where I was using yard ornamental 5 dome lamps inside my home, trying to
Wow.
light this thing up. It would never light up. So
Hmm.
that was my first clue.
Right.
And then there's the chronic feeling like you're being watched, like you're never alone. And still I ignored it because I own this house. This is my home, my dream home, and I'm just going to let all that stuff slide.
Yeah.
And then it progressed. It got to where it became physical attacks, and still I'm ignoring it. Um, Specifically, one time I was sitting in a chair in my bedroom watching TV, and I felt a burning across my chest. I'm like, what the hell? I didn't see a bug burn me or anything. I look, and I've got these very fine line scratches across my chest. I'm like, how did
Right.
that happen? What did I do? I still ignored it. My televisions were turning themselves off, but they began turning themselves on. My poor little dog was completely freaked out to the point where he was attacking me. He was so terrified. So I ended up giving him to his doggy sitter who lived across the street.
Yeah.
So now this house has got me by myself. And I had 2 subcontractors working for me, my ex-boyfriend and my son-in-law, who I always called my son. And I would
Right.
make them spend the night with me so I could make sure they go to work the next day. If you get my understanding here, so
Right.
I could
Yeah.
make them stay sober to keep an eye on them.
Hmm.
Um, we all began changing. We all saw it in each other, and they didn't live there. They would just stay over a lot, but we never saw
Hmm.
it in ourselves. At one point in time, I was sleeping with a 4-foot sword in bed with me because I was terrified. I didn't know what. I was just scared. My
Yeah.
son-in-law was sleeping with a 9mm next to his head. My ex-boyfriend sleeping with 2 butcher knives with him. We're all afraid. We're not talking to each other. We don't know what up, but we're scared.
Right.
Um, then became the part where I'm actually hearing a voice, not voices, a voice. And that became something that happened toward the very end. But in the interim, these guys, nobody would come over the house. Nobody. Nobody. Nobody went to come over. I was always by myself.
Right.
Um, Nobody
So
liked
it
it,
like
and I had it.
it isolated you, but then plus nobody
Oh, it
liked
had
it. So
me.
that
It had me down. I mean, it had me down. Um, I began using, just out of curiosity, I couldn't understand why I wasn't sleeping well at night. So I started using a sleep app that records you while you're sleeping. It was then
Mhm.
that I finally caught something, because being hearing impaired, I'm not
Mhm.
hearing. I'm like the worst person to haunt, because if you're screaming at me, I'm like, I'm not hearing you. So
Yeah.
I began listening to the sleep app, and of course I snore like crazy. That's the first thing I noticed. I'm like, oh my god. So, but in the background there was a sound like a lighter being flicked all night long. And
Mhm.
I'm like, what the hell is that? Um, Secondly, occasionally I would hear a voice yelling. And then
Mhm.
what finally got it through my stick head was there was a sound that the only way I could describe it is if you take two long serrated knives and zing one off the other, that final, you hear the scraping and then the zing at the end, and then
Oh,
it sounded like
yeah.
somebody beating on a bunch of pots and pans. I'm like, what the hell is that? So I
Right.
approached a paranormal society in Spartanburg.
Mhm.
They came to investigate, and they were like, you have a little girl in here. I'm like, that's not a little girl. It
Right.
is not.
Pretending, pretending maybe to be a little girl.
Right. I mean, and the second group that came through was, she became one of my best friends, is Lori Fowler. Um,
Uh-huh.
I'm always working away. So
Mhm.
she said she wanted to do a preliminary, and I told her, well, I would keep a lockbox on the door in case I lose my keys. I'll always have a way in. So here's the
Yeah.
code. Just go in. She's like, you don't know me. And I'm like, yeah. She goes, well, you're going to let me in your house? What if I steal something? I'm like, if I can't trust you to go in my house when I'm not there and not steal anything, how am I going to trust you to investigate? So she's like, you're right.
Right.
So they went in, and I was actually out of town working. And she told me from the front door on, she was attacked. Like, she physically got attacked at the front door where she was going down. She got growled at, and
Yeah.
in their initial walkthrough, they had something thrown at them. So they came back, and they had a massive group. They had 12. I think it was a dozen. And it's a big house, so
Mhm.
they were able to spread out. They had things thrown at them. They got EVTs. They got videos of orbs. It was absolutely insane. And at the end of the night, Lori never took out her divining rods. So I'm talking to them as they're packing up about 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning. Lori
Mhm.
reaches into her bag and she goes, oh, that's weird. She pulls out her divining rods at the bottom of her bag. They're twisted around each other and bent in half. And I'm like, uh, she goes, well, good
Wow.
night. I'm like, wow, you're leaving me?
It's like, yeah, I'm out on that one.
That house, the house was probably the worst mistake of my entire life. I can
Right.
directly attribute 5 people who've had contact with me or that house in the time I was living there that are dead.
Mhm.
Um,
Oh
and it
wow.
was always in 2 weeks after they had the contact. Like, my sister died two
Mhm.
weeks after I bought it. Um,
Wow.
the guy next door who used to work on their yard next door, I asked him to haul away debris for me.
Mhm.
And he did, because I cut down some trees. I came
Right.
home, and the whole street is packed full of emergency vehicles. I'm like, what the hell's going on? Can I get into my driveway? So a bunch of them had to move out of my driveway. I look over, this guy's laying in the driveway next door, butt up, face down, dead in the driveway. 2 weeks
Wow.
after he did the hauling for me. Um, my brother-in-law, after he sent me my sister's ashes, 2 weeks later, dead. Um, my boyfriend's mother spent the one and only time she had ever been to that house. 2 weeks later, dropped dead of a massive coronary. And then finally, my son-in-law, I called my son, 2 weeks
Mhm.
after the last time he spent the night in my house, killed himself. Committed suicide. I'm like,
Oh.
okay. And it was during this period. It was about, so I would say 7 or 8 months after he had died, that this thing finally had me. And I mean, it it had me for the
Right.
entire month of January of 2019. I do not ever remember. I don't remember anything from that entire month. And that's the honest to God truth. My story has never changed, and it never will. All I
Mhm.
remember is that I don't remember turning on a light. I don't remember ever changing out of my pajamas. I don't remember eating. I don't remember sleeping, showering, nothing. All I could hear was this voice saying over and over and over again, your son is dead and you're still alive. He was so much better than you. Why don't you kill yourself? Over and over and over and over again. And I remember when I kind of woke up, I was standing in the living room in the dark crying because this voice is just hounding me. And I'm holding a gun and I'm like, you're right. I should kill myself. And I'm like, whoa, I'm sad, not suicidal. And that's when I called the guy who sold me the house and told him, you got to take it back. This thing is trying to kill me. And of course, he thought I was crazy.
So,
As
um, so he like never has claimed to have had any kind of like activity.
there's the rub. It turned out no, he absolutely denied. He kept a stone cold face. He was like, okay, sign this paperwork. I'm taking it back. Here's some money to help you move. And I had to pay for people to come in and get all the crap out that I left. I only grabbed what I wanted and what I needed.
Right.
So I found out just not too long ago, last year, that there had already been reports of something in that house prior to my moving in there. And these people knew about it.
Wow.
So, yeah. And I didn't ask, is the house haunted? Has there been a murder in here? Blah, blah, blah. No, I didn't ask any of that. I didn't think about asking all that. I didn't know about the paranormal back then.
Right.
Paranormal found me with
Well, if it's like, well, you're in South
yes,
Carolina, correct? Well, if it's like North Carolina, I know they don't have to report deaths. So like if you ask, like sometimes realtors don't know.
right.
And I'm sure probably the same with like paranormal activity or
I
whatever.
got
But my thing would have been how quickly he like, he wanted to offer you this good deal and like it's this nice home. But then again, like you didn't know anything about the paranormal. But like that would have been my first thing, like, okay, something might be a little off here. Like basically practically handing it over to me. Like,
yeah, yeah. No, I did find out from all people, the heating and air guy, who we all work together.
mhm,
So I know a very specific group of contractors. And
right,
this gentleman named William came over to where I'm living now to fix my air conditioner. And I was talking to him, and he goes, "Oh yeah, that house. Yeah, the lady that lived there before you. She was always complaining about stuff." Um, for me, the big thing that just kind of drove me crazy was I was in the shower. I live alone. I'm in the shower. I
mhm,
reach for a razor, and I'm like, "Where the hell did this thing come from? I don't recognize this at all." And so,
yeah,
in my mind, trying to rectify all of these weird things happening, I'm like, "Okay, I've got it. The house is haunted, but it's haunted by me. I've got schizophrenia, and so I'm the person that's screwing me around." I'm the one that's making things appear or disappear or
mhm,
things that I've never seen before because I'm schizophrenic. So I'm trying to rationalize this out. And of course, I'm like, it's me. It's my fault. I'm crazy. And,
right.
and I truly believe that because that was the only viable explanation I
But
could
that's
think of.
like their goal, like especially demonic entities, is to like to try and make you feel like you're crazy and make you feel like it's your fault, and then the
Yeah,
isolation and when you got as many people as you did living in your house that's all afraid clearly of something, but nobody's talking because like I've kind of been in that situation. Like we were all afraid, all, like old enough to know what's going on. But it was like, I think we were all thinking, well, are they going to think I'm crazy? Like, if I say that, they're going to think I'm crazy.
right.
And then, but they were probably deep down thinking the same thing. Like, this is just something's going on. And I mean, I even had one girl come over. Like, I was always wanting people to spend the night because I was a teen.
Right.
And one girl come in and she'd never been there before. And as soon as she walked in, we were going upstairs. She's like, "Your house is haunted." And I'm like, "Huh? What? Come again?" She's like,
No,
"Your
it's
house is
not.
haunted." And I was like, I said, no, it's not. But in my mind, I'm like, yeah, it is. Like, that's because that's truly what I felt,
Right.
you know, but it's like, girl, like, what are you talking about? Like, you never been
Well, I
there
mean,
before.
and living alone, I don't have
Yeah.
a gauge.
Right.
So it's me by myself, and it's not a very big shove to convince me that I'm crazy. Okay, at one point in time, I literally took off all the cupboard doors because I thought
Yeah.
there was things hiding in there. It turned out I actually liked that look anyways. But I took off all the cupboard doors, and you know, my son or my ex would come over and they're like, "Well, what happened?" I'm like, "There's things hiding in there." They're like, "Yeah." You know,
Yeah.
everybody thinks I'm crazy. But let me tell you the end of this. This started a decade before all this. This is the beginning of it. I know what ended up happening in that house. I had an attachment. My ex and my son-in-law, who were my daughter's husband and my boyfriend at the time, went over to an abandoned cemetery. We lived in an old farmhouse. Went over to an abandoned cemetery and did some kind of ritual. By now, my son had converted to Luciferianism, which I knew
Okay.
nothing about. He had
Right.
renounced God. He'd gone over to the dark side, and that's where he was happy. That's where he was staying. I had no idea. They had performed a ceremony where you conjure a demon and inhale it. I guess it's granting possession. So I got home from
Right.
work that night. My ex, from the front door on, tried to kill me. Like, flat out attacked and tried to kill me over and over again until the police got there. And he went to prison for a year for that. But that's where it started.
Before you go on, I know we got some people in here. So if anybody is triggered by like suicide or anything like that, please maybe keep scrolling or whatever. Just know that it might get a little deep. So go ahead, keep going.
Yeah.
Just so we.
I mean, keep going until you find somebody who will listen to you.
Right.
I went up
Yes.
against this for probably close to 15 years now, 16 years of people thinking I'm crazy until the last part happened. When I abandoned that house, I swore to God I would never go back in it. I go past that neighborhood, I go miles around it because I will go nowhere near that house. Why would I tempt fate again? So that was an attachment, and I did exactly what I was supposed to do. But I was forced to go back in there a year after, almost to the day that I abandoned, to do just a little bit of work because the owner was putting it up for sale again.
Right.
And he rehabbed the entire house. And I didn't want to do it. I refused to do it. They kept just hammering at me to go back in there. And they're like, just name your price. There's nobody else. I'm like, how can there be nobody else? So I named some ridiculous price. And they were like, good, go. You do it. So I did go over there.
Right.
And from the minute I walked in that house, because I had not built up any immunities to what was in there, it got me, just like it got Lori from the front door on. I was an emotional wreck. So when I got upstairs to the room that my son or my ex used to use, which was across from the master bedroom, I was in the closet and I'm wiping up the shelves, and there's something on there, but I'm just wiping it anyways, and I'm crying, and out of nowhere, something, I mean, slugs me in the eye. And I dipped down. I'm like, God, shit, that hurt. You know what? And I got mad. I got really mad because I knew what it was. I knew it was going on. And this time I was irate. It already cost me so much that I was ready to go to war with it. And I did. I challenged it and I told it, if you want to finish this fight, you just follow me home. And it did. I literally begged it to follow me home. And it did. and it stayed with me for a short time thereafter. And I do a lot of Facebook Live. So all this is the results of this last encounter. I
Right.
documented it a lot on Facebook, and it got me. My eye was blood red. I called the property manager that I contract through, and she's a very godly woman.
Yeah.
I cussed her
Yeah.
up one side and down the other. I told her she could F off, take this house and shove it up her a-hole. I quit, and I don't ever want to hear from her again. And she's like, what is going on? I'm like, I told you. There's something in here, and it attacked me. She said, okay, just
Right.
walk away. I'll go over tomorrow, and I'll finish whatever you need to do. And I was like, then I'll meet you. And I did meet her there. When I got out of that car, and she looked at me, she's like, oh, my God, I'm so sorry. I didn't believe you. My eye was blood red, and it was swollen. She's like, what happened? And I told her. And so now she's like, yeah, I knew you were telling the truth. I'm like, why didn't you tell me? Everybody left me out there swinging in the wind by myself, telling me I'm crazy because you don't want to deal with it.
Mm-hmm.
She's like, well,
Yeah.
I didn't know what to do. Do I? No, do I know what to do?
Like give you some, confirmation and sanity, like
Affirmation.
let you know, yeah, like that you're not like crazy because like you have no experience with the paranormal.
No.
You're thinking, you're losing your mind, but all these people around you know that there's something going on, but oh well, I don't know. But if I was in that place and like I knew there was something going on and like I had somebody like a friend experiencing something, I'd be like, yeah, like I don't know what's going, what to do or whatever, but we can figure it out like together, not let you think you're
Right.
crazy.
No. But the point is that I lost everything. There were 5 people who died, and I cannot prove it, but I
Right.
know what I know.
Yeah.
I lost so much of my beautiful items that I just couldn't scramble to get with me quick enough, or I couldn't sell off fast enough. I lost my forever home.
Yeah.
I lost a, a huge
A lot of
a
stuff.
huge heart, a part of my future.
Right.
And that house cost me a lot. And to this day,
Yeah.
I will tell you that the best thing that could ever happen to that house is that it burns to the ground. That's the only
Right.
thing I can say about it. It needs to
Yeah.
burn down.
There's some places that just don't like need to have like it doesn't need to go from hand to hand because all you're doing is like you may be getting out of it. Like you're lucky if it doesn't follow you. Like some things are attached to certain people, but some things are attached to property. So when the next person leaves and then the next person comes, they're just passing down that torture and that torment. When I think they should be like you said, they should do something about it where nobody ever can live there again. Nobody ever has to endure that and go through what you went through and no telling how many other people.
Right. No, I know that prior to me moving in, there was something in that house, but when those boys and I stayed under that roof together, I
Right.
spoke to a very popular, well known, been on television multiple times, um, godly man. He's a preacher or a priest or something. He
Mm-hmm.
told me that when the 3 of us went into that home together, he said, you didn't just open a doorway, you 3 blasted open a portal. I actually have a picture of this demon sitting on my
Mm-hmm.
mantle. It's there.
Oh wow. Oh
And
wow.
what I found most interesting is that I always over decorated. I love lots of stuff. People call
Right.
it hoarding, I call it decorating. So I've always over decorated. And when you look at this picture, there's nothing on the mantle and there is nothing on the wall behind it. And I can conversely show you a picture of that room where you can see all the decorations, everything. But when that thing came through, there is
Mm-hmm.
nothing around it except it. And that
Right.
is actually what a portal looks like.
Yeah.
So I didn't capture the picture. Lori did, and she did it by accident. And it's there. It's honest to God right there. So
Right.
um, I know what that thing looks like. I know what it is. And now that I know that it really does exist, I mean, I knew about the
Mhm.
paranormal from movies and, TV shows and stuff. Oh, I thought I
Right.
knew it all. No, hell no.
Yeah.
Um, and I've always been sensitive my whole life. I've seen apparitions, I've heard things, and of course, my whole life, you're just crazy. You're just
Yeah.
crazy. So,
Right. Or, like, yeah, there's always people that don't believe. And
my
so,
mother,
but,
and she was sensitive. She knew I was seeing what I was seeing. She's just like, "You're just crazy." Why did you do
wow.
that to me?
Now, I know this is probably going to sound weird to some people, but when I was a teenager, there was a local church, and the church still is standing. It's went through a few couple of different hands since then, but our church was actually building their actual church. They were renting out the Y, but they were also renting out this particular church on Wednesday nights to hold their service. And it was an Episcopal church, so they don't have service on Wednesday nights or something like that. So that's why they could rent it out. But it had been a Head Start at one point for like pre-K kids or whatever. And my parents was on the youth group, and they would hold their meetings. And one of the families brought their children, and there was one girl that used to watch the kids all the time, and she just all of a sudden didn't want to watch them or whatever. And so I said, "Oh, I'll watch them." And there was a demon in this church.
Yeah,
And I know that probably sounds weird, thinking a demon in a church, right? What a place to be.
but no, that's
um,
exactly where they want to be.
right, exactly. And so I had dreams, and it come to find out, some of the other teens within the youth group was having the same dream. To a T, but none of us was talking to one another. We were talking to the youth group leaders about it.
Right.
So none of us knew that we were all encountering this. But I was in that room, and I was watching the kids, and they were watching Veggie Tales, and one of them, she was about 7 at the time, maybe, and the other one was like just a baby, like baby age.
Right.
And the Veggie Tale video went off, and she was like, "Hey, can I put in another one?" And I was like, "Yeah, sure. Just go pick it out, and I'll put it in." Well, when she stands up, you're imagining like a 5-year-old, their shadow, like not very tall, but I kid you not, on the wall was a shadow beyond 7 foot tall. Like it reached to the ceiling. It stopped. Like it moved with her. And then when she stopped, it stopped. And I pulled her, and I was like, "No, like do not go near that wall," because it was like watching her. The baby started crying, like extremely like crazy. Like I couldn't do nothing to comfort her. I'm trying not to freak out myself, because it's like I know what I'm seeing,
Right.
and it just continues on like across the way. I'm calling my mom. I'm like, "Hey, like, Mama, you got to get in here. Like, I just seen that thing that everybody's talking about. Like, I seen it. I was like, I'm not staying in this room." Well, the parents of this child, the children, they did not know about this. So my mom, like, imagine, you're being confronted all of a sudden, like, "Hey, there's a demon in this church. Your kids are in there. Like, she's not watching them unless she can come in the meeting." But the other ones knew about it in the meeting. So they let me come in. And like, after that, I didn't like going there. There was a lot of teens that didn't like going there. And I would have dreams. And it would tell me like certain teens that it didn't like. It would tell me like things that it would do to them. And a lot of them quit coming because this thing was tormenting them so much.
Yeah.
And actually, the one of the preacher's sons actually seen this thing face to face. I seen it in shadow form, but he actually seen it in its demonic form while vacuuming. Um, Another church bought it, and they actually built up a wall because there was like back there behind like the pulpit. You could go back there, and there's like all kinds of storage and stuff. But they closed that in, and that's like where it liked to stay.
Right.
And they painted a mural on this thing on the wall. And after they done that, they didn't even stay that long after that. And now it's another church. Now they've been there a while. This church. I don't know if they know what's going on in that place or not, but
You know what? The Episcopalians, oddly enough, they're the hellfire and brimstone group. They're the ones
right.
that actually will exercise you. These
Mhm.
They're the ones.
I
The Episcopalians
fully
scare the crap out of me.
right. I fully think that they know that there was something in there. And the thing is the church, like they sold out the church because all the members of that church was extremely old. Like they have pictures of the members, and none of them, I kid you not, was probably like below 70.
Right,
Like
right.
they were all, and so most of them, sadly, majority of them was dying off. So then they just sold the church, and it switched complete denomination. So,
Yeah, I mean that's what happens. People wonder how. Well, now my my reaction to having had this experience is that instead of running from the paranormal, I have been on the attack ever since. I go out
right.
and I confront it. I'm out there actually looking for these things. If you look on my page, I have so many lives where I'm going to abandoned places, and I'm always alone. They're like, "Don't go by yourself." And I'm like, there's nobody to go, so I'm not going to
Right.
go. So I'm
That's
exploring these cabins in the middle of the woods by myself, and I'm going to these abandoned graveyards. I'm going to, crybaby bridges in the middle of daggum nowhere.
right.
And there's times where I'm like, "What the hell are you doing?" you know, I'm concerned for myself, but I'm not going to stop doing it. I do it in the spirit of exploration, but I'm also looking.
Yeah, well, I learned a long time ago because, like, back when I first, found out about my abilities, like when I was a teen, I become really, I guess the word to say is, amazed and interested and
Right,
intrigued by my.
right.
And I found if you go looking, you're gonna find what you're looking for. Like it's out there, and
Yeah,
if
it's
you
out
know
there.
places that's notorious for these certain kinds of things happening, like you'll find it, and you're probably gonna regret finding it in the end. But it's out
Sometimes,
there.
sometimes. Um, I have rarely had. I can't even name any bad experiences I've had out doing these explores. One time I went to a recently discovered slave cemetery. And I was out there going to do my first night live by myself. And I'm standing there talking, and I feel somebody grab my shoulder and squeeze, and I'm like, oh! And I jumped. And immediately I was
Yeah.
like, oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I wasn't expecting you to do that, but I'm leaving. And I
Mhm.
often have hilarious experiences because I forgot that I locked my truck. And so
Mhm.
my SUV. So I grabbed my equipment and I head to the SUV. I grab the door. The alarm goes off. I'm like, oh my god, oh my god. So I get in and I go to crank it up. I didn't know this thing had a kill switch. So now I finally get the alarm off, but the truck won't start. I'm like, I cannot spend the night out here. So
Yeah.
I finally got it to start, and I was like laughing. I'm still alive. I'm laughing all the way home. I'm like, that was so scary, you know. And other experiences, like as a contractor, sometimes I have to break into these rental homes because we don't have a key anymore. And I always make
Right.
them
Yeah.
send me a work order in case something happens. And thank God I had a work order, so I had to break into this unit. Of course, I'm going to take the easy way before I drill out locks,
Right.
checking all the windows, checking all the doors, and finally I found a window after I tried everything else at the front that I could wedge up, and I pried it, got it lifted, and went inside. And they're like, if the lady is still there, tell her she has to leave. You know, the boyfriend vacated, she's on the lease, blah blah blah. I'm like, okay, nothing new. So I go into the room, and there's a lady sleeping in the bed, and I'm like, I'm knocking on the wall. I'm like, ma'am, trying to be gentle, not scare her, ma'am,
Right.
you have to leave. You can't be here. And um, then I go to banging on the wall, and I'm like, ma'am. Then I go to pounding on the wall and like kneeing the bed to shake it. I'm like,
Yeah.
ma'am, you can't be here. And I was like, oh, wait a minute. And I look closer. I'm like, oh shit, she's dead. She's dead.
Oh my.
Oh, she was dead. so, so I have to call the police. So I'm thinking, my God, thank God I have a work order because the first person I look at is the one who found the body.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
they're like, who tried to break in the back door? It was me. Who tried to break in the front door? That was me. Who jimmied these windows on the side of the house? That was me. He goes,
Yeah.
you finally went in through this window. I'm like, that was me. He goes, what happened? And I told him, and I go, she's dead? And he goes, yeah, you didn't check her pulse? I'm like, hell no.
No.
No, just no. So as I'm standing out front, and this is in the middle of the summer in South Carolina, it gets blue blazing hot.
Oh,
So
yeah.
I'm standing there in the sun, sweating my butt off, waiting, for them to get finished inside, deciding that she's dead. And the front door was propped open for them, and I felt a cool breeze, a very cool breeze go. It kind of rolled across me and took off, and I was like, "Oh, there she goes. You're not trapped anymore, baby." So it turned out that she had actually drank herself to death, and
Mm.
she had been dead for several days. I couldn't smell the decomp because she
Mm-hmm.
turned the AC down real low and had two fans blowing on her. Apparently, she liked it nice and cool when she slept.
Yeah.
So I knew that she had come out of that house. And
Right.
I was very happy for her that, finally somebody had found her and that,
Mm.
she could go wherever they were going to take her.
Right.
So
Yeah.
I haven't been back to that house, not because I'm
Yeah.
afraid to, because she's not there anymore. I was out front when she exited. So
Right.
that was,
I,
that made my heart happy.
my my great great. I think I told you about her. She lives in Florence, South Carolina, and she lives down like a little like she lives in the country part,
Yeah.
the off part, and there was a house. Nobody lives there still to this day, but there was someone that lived in it, and nobody had seen her for a while. It was kind of weird, and after about 2 weeks, I think her family or something checked on her. They finally seen someone, and she had been in there 2 weeks in the summer, like you said. It's hot
Yeah.
in South Carolina,
Oh, yeah.
and um, I don't know. They had talked about like modeling how all that, but this was like probably 15 years or more ago. The house still sits there. Weeds all grown up. Nobody ever moved it. Nobody ever moved the house out to the trailer.
Yeah.
So I don't know if it's any kind of activity or what. I don't even know if maybe the family owns it and just I don't know, just kind of odd. But so it's something I've always remembered, from back like when that
But,
happened, and I was
you
telling.
know, living in North Carolina as well as I do, living in South Carolina, that we're living in the original colonies. And
Right, yeah,
the land is just soaked with blood. You had the
right, yeah,
American Revolution, you had the Indian Wars, you had the Civil War. There's rarely a piece of land that has not seen somebody fall on it, as well as the original settlers and whatnot. So, literally, I think that the Carolinas should be two of the most haunted states
right,
in the United
right.
States. Miserably.
Georgia,
People don't realize
Georgia
how much blood it
is
takes to
right.
build a society.
Mm-hmm. And
Literally, you're
majority
fighting somebody the whole way.
about when you are like watching these paranormal shows are within the South. I mean, yeah, sure, you do have places like up north and like out in Vegas and all. The majority of those are like prison, mental hospital, stuff like that. But out here, like we got plantations, we
Yeah.
got just regular property, just property that people move in. And that's another thing. People that you build a home like brand new, nothing is going to happen. It's not the house; it's the land.
The
Like
land. You
that.
can build a brand new house on a very quiet looking piece of property. You don't know what you built on. People literally buried people where they fell. There was
Yeah,
none of that funeral protection stuff. You were traveling, and you're not going to travel with a corpse. You're going to bury them where they dropped.
right.
So the odds of, like, the place where I live is a trailer park, yes, but these lots are at least 2 acres each, and it's
Hmm.
a very rural country setting. And couple that with the fact that there's only 5 of us that live here out of 18 trailers anymore. So the rest are
Right.
all abandoned. So I like it because I don't, like having neighbors. So basically, I'm sitting up on top of this hill by myself, and I'm loving every minute of it. But I've worked on all these trailers, just about every single one at some point in time. And I can
Mm-hmm.
tell you that the trailer that's right over there, um,
Mm-hmm.
I was in there working on it, and I was in the kitchen looking for something in my tool bag, but I had a bunch of tools inside the bathroom, which was down the hallway, and the bathroom door was right across from the back door. And I always keep the doors open when I'm working for an escape. For what, I don't know. I just always do it.
Right.
So
Yeah.
I'm bent over, and I'm at the side of my eye. I see something long and thin, impossibly tall, and
Mm-hmm.
black and impossibly fast. I saw it go jetting out of the bathroom and out the back door. And I'm like, shit, somebody just stole some of my tools. So I go flying out the back door. I'm looking everywhere. There's nothing there. There's
Yeah.
nothing missing. And I come back in. I'm like, I saw you. And I told the lady that lives there, or she just recently vacated. She's like, yeah, I thought there was something in here. That's why they can't keep renters in that trailer.
Just my friend. I have I have another tenant here. You may not see him. He
Yeah,
just pops in. Lives rent free.
yeah, right, right. That's what I call it. When there is something in a house, I call it. I say that they're nesting. They literally built a nest within this
Right.
dwelling, and they don't have to reside within the confines of a building. They're doing it to be next to you. That,
Yeah.
that's not a terrifying thought. I don't know what is.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I've literally lived in so many places that have had things in them, and up into the house I owned, it was never anything terrifying at all. The closest I ever got to being afraid was living in a converted barn close to Anderson, and at night I would literally prop a chair under. And it's I'm a house hog. This is a massive place. It was a barn,
Yeah.
and I would
Yeah.
prop a chair underneath the doorknob because I would hear like the whole house being torn apart. Like I was scared to go to the bathroom at night.
Maybe it's just converted barns. I live in a
It's
converted
my
barn.
fault. I think it's my fault. I think I had tried them,
It was
but
like, well, I know, but yeah, that's the thing with people like us. Like, we just naturally attract them.
yeah.
So
But if you
it's
don't know what you're looking for, then you don't know what's going on.
right.
I thought the house was being torn apart.
Yeah.
I can remember, standing in the kitchen one night after I came in from work, and that's when I was working in a grocery store as a meat
Mhm.
cutter. And I'm standing in the kitchen, and all I've got on is this little nightlight. I'm making myself a end of the night cup of tea, and it had happened possibly 2 weeks prior to that. That a guy named Harry missed the turn, or no, wait, he was coming down Anderson Road. A car pulled out. He and his girlfriend were on his motorcycle. They came across that car. They crashed into it. They were ejected off the bike. The
Mhm.
girlfriend she was messed up. She was in the hospital for months. The Harry hit the tree out front and it killed him and broke his neck. So
Oh
I'm
yeah.
sitting in the kitchen making tea. I'm the only one living there. And from behind me, I hear somebody with a gravelly voice, like they had a sore throat, say,
Mhm.
hello. And I'm like, ah. So I whip around my pistol and there's nobody there. And I'm like, don't do that. I can hear
Yeah.
you, but I couldn't see you. So don't creep up on me like that anymore. And I
Yeah.
never heard from Harry again, but I remain convinced that it was Harry. Or the guy
Yeah.
who ended up dying in the backyard, a homeless guy. I don't know why he chose that yard to die in, but that's where he died. So it was one of those
Yeah.
two, one out front, one out back.
Wow.
But then there was the old lady who used to own the house, and um, I had a big picture window with blinds, and I had them open, and the reflection from the street, which was actually up, um, when a big truck or something would go by, it would reflect the light off of that and throw it onto the back wall.
Oh,
and you
yeah.
can see the blinds and everything. So I'm sitting in the chair watching TV, and the TV is over by the back wall. I can see the blinds in shadow completely. And then I see somebody walk across the blinds. And I'm like, what the hell? Who's on my porch? Go outside. I look, nothing. Go up to the street, look up and down, around the corner, nothing. And I'm like, go back inside. I'm like, I saw you. But it's been things like that my whole life, and none of it ever frightened me like
Yeah.
my house did. And that's when I actually became involved, like overly involved in the paranormal, to educate myself, to know when something was happening, because now I recognize the symptoms. I was
Right. Yeah.
probably as close to being possessed as one human being can be without being possessed. And I honestly, like, I was to the point where I was beginning to hate God because I was begging and pleading and praying for help and nothing. So,
Yeah.
I did at one point take a crucifix that I've had for 40 years and I threw it across the room and I yelled, I hate you, God. And that's when it really started getting bad in there. I was like, oh, I don't care. I'm mad at God. God's not helping me. I need help, and nobody's helping me. Everybody thinks I'm crazy. So after that house, I educated myself.
That was the demon putting the thoughts in your
Everybody
head.
said that, but I'm going to tell you the truth. It was me. I was pissed. I was pissed. I rarely ever asked for help in anything, and I'm on my knees praying and begging for help, and I'm not getting any help.
Yeah.
Everybody can say it was the demon running blockage, blah, blah, blah. But in truth, I was talking to God, and I don't believe that a demon can block God. I think that God just wanted me to go through this so that I would learn. And now I thank Him, the higher power, for the experience, because it's taught me. And I did survive it. Others didn't. So.
Right. It shows you that good all went against evil. And even though
you ask for help, you don't get it the way you think you're going to get it.
he cannot showed up exactly like right then or whatever. But I mean, he obviously was there. And I know that, being angry and all because, you're not getting it exactly right. But like you said, it had to be a reason. There's always a reason. And so, I mean, I really, really appreciate you coming on and sharing and all. And I'm glad we were able to, some way, get the but we got it out there.
We did.
And I would definitely be in touch with you for you to get back on here and share your stuff about the Dead Zone girls. We definitely need to get that for sure.
Yeah. You know what? This has been so much fun. This is one of my favorite interviews. It's so easy talking to you. I want to say this. Thank you so much for having me on your show. You are excellent. Thank you.
Well, thank you